Hello everyone, I'm back. My name is Ginell, for those of you if you haven't watched my videos before. I am here today to teach you how to do what I thought was going to be a 1-hour beanie. I created a Facebook page at the beginning of the pandemic to teach my friends how to crochet. I use crochet as sort of a form of therapy for myself whenever things are getting crazy for me, so I thought it would be a good way to kind of keep everybody happy during a potentially tough time. And so a lot of my friends joined the group and started learning to crochet, and one of them is my friend Krisa, and we have known each other since gosh, it's been like 28 years now. She was my maid of honor, and she decided to pick up a crochet hook and start learning to crochet right away, and she's doing a great job. And one of her goals after we did our quarantine blanket, we've done a couple other projects including the pocket wrap and some other little things. And one of the things that she wanted to learn was how to make a beanie. And making a beanie is sort of, I feel, a rite of passage. When you first start learning to crochet, you want to make beanies. In fact, there was a particular year where I made one for just about everybody in my family. I have crocheted them, I've knit them. They're fantastic, they're quick, they're great gifts to give to everybody, and they're wonderful. But I've never timed a beanie before. And the particular one that she picked, I gave her a bunch of pictures to choose from, and the one that she picked was a very, very simple pattern. It's just a ribbed stitch, which is super easy, and it said on it, because pictures I grabbed from Pinterest, it said on it 1-hour beanie, and I'm like, sweet, I'll teach Krisa how to do this and everybody else, and I will have that video up by dinner time. And that is not what happened. So I want to show you kind of my journey and what I've decided, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to do a little like myth buster on this 1-hour beanie thing and see if you actually can do a beanie hat in 1 hour by crocheting it. So what happened was I planned it all out, super simple. I don't do things by stitch count, I do them by measurement most of the time. That way we don't have to worry about my gauge as opposed to your gauge, Krisa's gauge, everybody else's, right? Because some people crochet tighter than others. My crochet is very loose. So usually when I go by stitch count, my gauge is like way bigger than everybody else's. My hat like can cover my whole body. So what I did instead was I planned it out by size. And I got these sizes off of a different pattern on, you could do a child size, teen size, women's, or men's. It was kind of funny because I was like, are women's and men's heads really that different? I mean, really, once you're an adult, we all wear the same size hat, right? But I went and measured my son's head, and he actually has a slightly bigger head than me. So yes, I guess men are a little bit bigger. And the plan was I wanted to make one for my husband, so I'm going to use the biggest one to see how much yarn it took, because I went through my stash, because when it's bigger projects, I'll go and buy the yarn, but if it's smaller projects, I'll use the stash. And if you saw I think it was my third video called Change of Plans, when we were working on the quarantine blanket and I realized that it was going to be way too big, you got to see at the end of the video a view into my crazy stash closet, and I have a lot of yarn in there. So I try to go off of what I have, and always to be safe, I try to pick one that has 2 skeins, just in case, because I don't know how many skeins it's going to take until I actually do it. So this one was Wool Ease by Lion Brand, and it's a beautiful, almost kind of a denim look. And I was like, I'll make one for my husband, that'll be the practice one, and then I'll make mine on camera, right? Except the one for my husband turned out to be, this is how far I got. Isn't that pretty though? It's like turning out really pretty. But this is how far I got. It's only about halfway done, and it took me about 2 hours. I was missing the last stitch, so I ended up having to stitch mark. And of course that takes a minute to, my ego was like, I don't have to stitch mark. If you realize that you're not getting the stitches, you probably should stitch mark. And there's nothing wrong with it. Master crocheters do it, so just do it. When you realize that it's not, the numbers aren't working out right, fix it. So I just use like safety pins for stitch markers. I'm not fancy. So anyway, that's how far I got. It took me about 2 hours, and I'm not even, that's like a little over halfway. So I decided that this 1-hour beanie thing might be a myth. But looking into it, I realized that I am using a size 4 yarn, right? That's kind of your basic yarn. But I think, if I remember correctly, a 1-hour beanie is maybe one of these big, thick size 6 yarns. Well, this is also Lion Brand. I must have a thing for Lion Brand. And this is Wool Ease Thick and Quick. It's a super bulky size 6 acrylic wool mix, washable, right? Always buy washable. You never know. Anyway, so what I think I'm gonna do, because now it looks like I'm gonna be making at least 3 beanies. I'm gonna finish the one for my husband because I think that's gonna look really pretty. And then I'm gonna, of course, do the one for me with a little puffball on top so we match, because cute. And then I think I'm gonna make this. But on camera, between you and me, we're gonna do this one and we're gonna time it and see how long it takes to make a 1-hour beanie with super chunky yarn. You're basically just gonna make a rectangle. Super easy, right? You've made rectangles in the past. We've done squares for the blanket. We did rectangles for the pocket wrap. And now we're gonna do a smaller rectangle and we're gonna make a hat out of it. And I'm gonna do 11" by 18". Again, I have fallen in love with doing the foundation row. So I'm no longer doing chaining because I like it better when you go too far and you can just take off a row instead of having to go all the way back and then take down the chain. So if you make something that's just a little bit too big or a little bit too short, all you have to do is add on to that foundation and it's perfect. So it just saves so much time and happiness, and it's stretchy on both sides and it's great. So we're gonna go this way and we're gonna work out this way. So this will be our foundation row, and then we'll just crochet it out until it's the length that we want it to be. Sounds super simple, and it should be. So it's not about how hard it is, it's more about how fast it is. And you may choose that, you know, a 1-hour beanie is a great idea, but maybe a 4-hour beanie is more what you want because it has, you know, the smaller yarn or it's softer or whatever. So let's find out, right? Let's go ahead and start. Sometimes you just gotta go for it. So you just pull it, I pull them out from the middle, that way your yarn isn't rolling all over the place while you're trying to do this, and I don't have to have a bucket to hold it on camera, so that's why. This yarn is, as you can see, huge, and the plan here is we're gonna start off on one end, and that end is going to be, since we're doing the women's size, it's gonna be 11 inches. So we're gonna go from here to here. I'm gonna do a foundation, and the stitch that I have chosen to do for this hat, and it's gonna sound super familiar because we did a similar one before, but this time we're gonna do a rib stitch, but I'm gonna do it with a half double crochet because I think it gives it a little bit more space than a regular crochet. If you wanna do single crochet, you totally can, but I'm gonna do a half double crochet rib stitch, and it's hopefully gonna be super cool. But we're gonna start off with a half double crochet foundation, just like we did for the pocket wrap. So go ahead and pull your slip knot, and then you're gonna chain up 2, 1, look at how thick that is already. So while I'm teaching, I'm gonna have the timer off, but while I'm just crocheting, I'll turn it on and then we'll see how long it takes. So half double crochet, we're gonna wrap once, we're gonna go into that first one, pull up yarn, but since we're doing the foundation half double crochet, we're gonna wrap it once, pull it through because that's your chain stitch, and then we're gonna wrap it again and go through all 3. You can do a foundation with any stitch. So if your project requires you to do a double crochet, you can do it with a double crochet as well. It's pretty easy. Again, wrap it, go into that last chain that you did, pull it through. You're gonna do your chain stitch first and then your half double crochet. And we're gonna do that all the way until we get to 11 inches. So I'm gonna start the timer now. Oh my gosh, now I'm nervous. Okay, that looks like about 11 inches right there. So this is going to be equal to the length of your hat, pretty much from here to here, right? And then with a little bit of extra to fold up. This one folds up like that, and I kind of wanted the brim to be just a little bit longer so that you have a nice thick brim. Now, maybe with this hat you don't want a brim because it's going to be really thick anyway. So we will find out. It's a journey, right? So let's continue on. If that is the case and you do this, you may want to shorten your starter band because you may not want a brim because it's going to be so thick. But okay, so we're going to go ahead and go up 1, and then we're going to turn. And then we're going to do our half double crochets. Oops, I forgot to pause. We're going to do our half double crochets all the way, but we're only going to do in the back stitch. So this is the front stitch. See that little V right there? This is the front, this is the back. We're only going to do it in the back stitch all the way across. And that's what's going to create that ridge that will become your rib on your rib stitch. So I already chained up 1. I'm going to actually go a little bit because I went off and did other stuff, which is life, right? So we're going to wrap this. We're going to go in here in the back stitch only, and then we're going to pull up, and then we're going to go through and pull through all of those. And we're just going to do that all the way. But the one thing I want you to do is I want you to take the top of this stitch, because when you come back, you're not going to realize that this one that's sort of on the side is actually the top of that stitch. And you will make the same mistake I did probably and not use that one, and then your hat will get skinnier and skinnier as you go. So just go ahead and put like a pin in there, or you could use just a different color yarn, or I like to use safety pins so that they don't poke me. And I apologize because they usually, hit the top of the thing and make noise. So let's keep going. I'm going to do a couple stitches here just so I can make up for the lost time, but you're going to go all the way across. It's going to be super duper easy. I always get so excited when you're working with variegated yarn and the new color comes in. You're like, ooh, that's exciting. It's such a wild life I lead. Okay, so this is the top right here. This is where it gets confusing. So you may want to, your first couple of rows, you may want to stitch count and make sure that you're getting all of those pieces in there, because this is actually the top of that stitch. And to make sure, I just go through and count the stitches on the bottom. Once you have your stitch markers in there, you no longer need to count, because you just go right to where the stitch markers tell you to go. Okay, that's the second row. Chain up, turn, wrap it, go in the next one, and then put your stitch marker right there at the top. This does feel familiar. Maybe I have done a 1-hour beanie in the past, and my muscle memory is coming back. Can you imagine if you're doing 1-hour beanies, how many hours there are between now and of like spare time you have? Obviously there are a lot of hours, but like not all of us have a lot of spare time. But how many hours of spare time you have between now and Christmas, and how many people in your family could have a beanie for Christmas? Like, it could be magical. I love homemade gifts better than store-bought gifts. I mean, all gifts are wonderful, but homemade gifts or handmade, I guess I should say, are, I don't know, they require a lot of thought and time and love, and they just, even if they're little drawings or whatever, they're still super special to me. Okay, so see what I'm saying? You kind of feel like just the way that this turns, that this should be the last stitch, but really the last stitch is over here on the side. So that's why it's really important when it comes to rib stitches to mark your stitch so you don't get lost. So all I do is you can take the pin out first, or just go through it. Try to work around the pin. And then you just take the pin out, up one, and then put that pin back in. And then just keep going. Okay, first of all, I don't know if you've noticed, but my beanie is no longer 11 inches. I think I'm gonna redo this. This happens sometimes, but this beanie is now like over 12 inches. It just like got bigger as I started working with it. So that's definitely something that you want to think about. I'm going to pause this. Actually, I'm going to restart it and we're going to start over, and I'm actually going to redo the color too. Hold on. I'll bring it back to where we're at. How many rows are we? I'll retime it from the beginning and we'll see how many rows I'm at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, well, 7.5. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay guys, I'm kind of back to where I left off. I managed to shave a couple inches off, or inches. I managed to shave a couple of seconds off, like 6 full minutes, just because I had it up on my lap and not like bent over or trying to do it for the camera. So, so keep that in mind. You may go faster just because you're sitting in a more comfortable position and doing that. So I did redo the pooling and it didn't really make that much of a difference because you still have it right there. So it'll be interesting to see how that all works out. You can actually, obviously, when you get to the end of these 2 rows, you can cut your yarn and start with just the cream and make it perfect if you want to. I have done that in the past many times. Actually, I'm kind of a control freak, so I'm always kind of manipulating the way my yarn pools on everything. But for this, because we're just doing a sweet little simple beanie, I'm just gonna go for it and we'll just see how the pooling happens naturally on there. So we actually shaved off some time. So we're back where we were on the yarn. So let's go ahead and continue and we'll see how fast this goes. So I'm not quite there yet, but you can tell that this is going way faster because what took me 2 hours with this yarn has taken me about, well, I mean, I still have another row to go, but probably about 23 minutes to do with the thicker yarn. So we can already tell that it's going to go a lot faster. I do think though that I'm probably, this one's a little wider because this one's the men's size, but I do think though that I'm probably going to like this feel better than this. But we'll find out. We'll wait until we get to the end and we'll see. But I mean, it's always nice to have different choices. Okay, here we are at 30 minutes. Looking pretty good. I think we have a pretty solid chance of getting this done in an hour. But let's do a little assessment and see where we're at. The goal for the women's size is to get to 18 inches long. And right now we're at 14, so yeah, that's gonna go really quick. However, we've only got this much yarn left in the first skein. So I think we're gonna go into a second skein on this. These ones, these thick and quick ones only have 80 yards, 80 meters, 87 yards in them. So I got a package of these puffballs. I bought them on Amazon and I'll put the link in the description. There's tons of different ones. I choose to use the puffballs that have these cords in them because they're easier to sew them on than the snap ones. They just seem like they'd be really easy to lose. And it's hard to stick a snap through yarn this thick. So anyway, these are the ones I got. These are the last 2 colors. So as I said earlier, I've made lots and lots and lots of hats, and there was one particular year, I think it was 2 years ago, that I made hats for my kids and all their friends. And so everyone had these cute little fluffy puffballs. Some of the guys chose not to, some of them liked it. And so I used all the good colors when I did those. And these are the leftover colors. And for some reason, I just cannot, the one I'm using on my blue hat is the last good one, I think. But even that doesn't really go with this. So I may choose, if I do a puffball for this hat, I may actually choose to do it with the yarn. I think this one probably goes the best. But even still, that looks like somebody's hair. We'll see how it turns out. I think if I'm going to use any of the fur balls, it'll probably be that one. I just like the color contrast a little bit better. But let's continue. Okay, let's pause for a second. We need to switch yarn and kind of see where we're at. Yeah, it's as I suspected. We need to do about 2 more rows and we are out of yarn. So we are going to go on to this next skein. But where we choose to start our yarn is going to be the question. because even if it ended like right there, it would still be fine. So I think I'm gonna just take most of the stripes out. This is gonna be loose until you actually like pull those tight and weave those in. So don't stress if you come up on it and it's way looser than the other ones, just kind of pull them tighter. We'll get to it when we go in and weave our ends in. Just make sure you don't miss this little guy because he kind of gets lost in there sometimes. The one that's right before you change, because his always ends up getting tighter and the one next to it is so much looser. Okay, let's just double check how long this is. Looks to be about 18 inches, which is what the goal was for our hat. 11 by 18 for women's size. So we're at 11, we're at about 18. Perfect. Luckily too, we'll have cream and this color right up next to each other. Not as much cream as usual, but still it should work. So then now the next thing to do is we're going to put this together and we're gonna sew it together end to end right there. And there's two different ways you can do this. A lot of people will choose to do just a slip stitch down this or you could do a single crochet or you could do a slip stitch. Because of the ribbing in it, yeah, let's do a slip stitch. Because we got ribbing here, ribbing here. Well, actually, if we're gonna do a slip stitch, we've got ribbing here and here. We should probably do it on the inside. So let's flip it this way. I always worry that a slip stitch is going to be too thick, especially when you've got yarn this thick, and you can just sew these two together if you want, but I think it might take away from the texture if we do that. So let's try and just slip stitch it together and see what that looks like. We may not like it, and maybe we will choose to sew it together. So to slip stitch it, we want to keep that ridge sort of that's going on here, but we don't want it to be like an extra wide ridge. So I'm going to grab the back of this loop. See this stitch right here? There's like a back and a front, and this stitch has a back and a front. I'm going to do the front of this loop and the back of this loop together. And then we'll see if that gives us the results that we want. Let's get rid of this guy. He's kind of in the way. So I chained up one. We're going to go the front of this one. We're going to go the back of this one. Pull it through both. What's that going to look like? I think that should work. We'll see. Front of that one, back of that one. Yeah, that should work. Front. I would do this kind of loose too. You don't want it to like cinch this in. You want it to be nice loose like that so they kind of match. So if you ever want to loosen up your stitches, you just kind of pull them up a little higher than you normally would. I'm actually pretty pleased with that ridge. I wonder how it looks on the inside. Not too shabby. There we go. Now, I would probably choose the side here. Let's we're going to end with a little chain just to kind of knot it. But I would definitely like assess and make sure that that is the look you want. If you want that ridge right there, I mean, I think that looks pretty good. Maybe turn it inside out, make sure that that part looks good too, which it seems like it does. That's exciting. Okay, so then maybe take a minute to sew in your ends and figure out which side you like the best? Like, what do you want to be the rim that goes up? Actually, I think it doesn't matter. I think they're both pretty even. Yeah. Okay, so I say we just cinch this side. This is where the top's gonna be of the hat, and it's the easiest because that's where this yarn is already, so we don't even have to cut the yarn. We can literally just, I mean, we have to cut the yarn, obviously, so we can, but I mean, we don't even have to like cut it, weave it in, and then start at the other end if we don't want to. We could just go ahead and continue on right here. So I'm just gonna make it a nice long tail, so I've got yarn to work with for sewing in that top part. Pull that out so that's nice and knotted. Wow, am I even gonna get this yarn in this needle? That's the question. Okay, so I'm gonna go the opposite direction that yarn came from, just so that it's almost kind of like knotting it. I'm gonna go through like 5 or 6 of them. The bases of those stitches right there. Pull it through, not too tight, because you don't want to like again, you don't want to cinch it. You just want it to like look natural like the other stitches that are around it. And then I'm gonna skip this one, the one that we just came through, and I'm gonna go back the way I came. And you don't even have to go all the way to the end, just back the way you came, a few stitches, and then stretch it out so that it's, again, not visible. You could do this on the inside, but I mean, you can actually decide at the end which side is the inside and which side's the outside, but, and then I'm gonna do that with this one as well. Okay, here comes the fun. You might want to like put it on and make sure that it kind of fits your head. I can sort of tell already just based on my other hat that it's going to fit my head just fine. So 47 minutes. We can do this. The goal here is basically just to cinch the top. Whoops, if you can even get the yarn in there. Okay. So the goal is just to cinch the top in, right? So it doesn't have to be perfect stitches. You just kind of want to go in and out up here on top. Almost like, I guess you would call that like a baste stitch. And as you're going around, you kind of want to cinch as you go, because you don't want to, this yarn, you don't have to worry about it breaking because it's pretty thick yarn. But most yarn, like the yarn that I used for the pocket shawl, that yarn, if you pull on it too hard, it'll unravel and it'll break. So you just kind of want to be careful, just depending on what size yarn you're using. This is not going to be visible, so it doesn't matter, because it's going to cinch together so much at the top that no one's going to see the yarn or any of that. It'll just be just this bundle of cinch at the top like that. But you don't want it to be too thick up here, because you do want to tighten that so that the hole is closed. So you don't want to go too far in. Like some of the stuff, when I do tassels and stuff, you'll see that I go up in there because I don't want it to pull on that and just pull like one single yarn. But when you are doing something like this, you don't want too much bulk right up there at the top, because it's going to be bulky anyway, because this yarn's crazy thick. You just want to go kind of like choose some pieces in here so that you can pull it tight and make a knot, so it doesn't come unraveled, right? Okay, so those are nice and tight. It's gonna want to knot like way up there. Okay, so there you go. It's knotted. It's pretty sturdy. It's not gonna come undone, and you don't have a hole at the top of your hat. So now it's time to add your puffball. I'm going to use this dark brown. So if you want to make your own puffball, I can probably do a whole separate video about that, but there's lots of videos on YouTube that'll show you how to make a puffball. That's obviously going to add to how much time it takes, because making your own puffball takes some time. We're gonna, in order to keep it under an hour, we're gonna go ahead and do this and see how that little loop right there is so helpful. So when you are ordering your puffballs or you're buying them in the store, I would say make sure that it has that little loop right there. If my hair wasn't all gray, this would look like my actual hair coming out of this hat. It's gonna look kind of funny, because that's kind of close to my natural hair color. I would definitely go through that loop a couple of times just to make sure that it's super secure. I have noticed with these loops that the puffball does kind of flop around a little bit up there, so you can actually like sew, especially if you're using thinner yarn, you can actually sew into the puffball to make sure it's a little bit more secure. Okay, now I'm going to take it to the inside. We're going to turn it inside out and we're going to knot it. Making a knot in this thick yarn is just funny because it's like, it's just not like a normal knot. Okay, and then we're gonna weave in our ends. Almost done, 53 minutes. I'm gonna try and weave them into where it is obviously cream so it matches. And time, that is 54 minutes, almost 55. So I think we may have done it. Here is our lovely hat. You can actually make these puffballs fluffier by using a hairdryer too. So let's try it on. It's kind of cute. Let's see how it looks. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna continue the blue one and see how long that one takes, just kind of roughly estimate how long that one takes. I'm gonna assume it's probably about a 4-hour beanie, and this is like a 1-hour beanie. And then you can decide what you prefer for yourself, right? Like, I mean, do you want a like thick, and this is really cute, a thick beanie like this, or do you want something that is a little bit like maybe a little thinner and more knit looking? Two very different looks, right? So I'll finish this one. I'll finish the men's one, and I'll probably finish the women's one, and then you can see the differences, and we will have a little fashion show, I guess, at the end, and we'll see what one you like better, and you can choose if you want to do a 1-hour beanie or a 4-hour beanie. Completely up to you. Ta-da! Okay, so if I'm being honest, this beanie turned out a lot cuter than I thought it would. So I fluffed up the ball with my hairdryer, and it's nice and fluffy now. This is definitely like super thick. Let's pretend it's not a 90-degree day in July when I'm doing this, but if you want to start making hats for people and you want to do them like for your whole family for Christmas, I mean, now's a good time to get started, right? And you have plenty of time. But check out the back. Like, isn't that just so cute? Anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and continue with the other beanie, and we will finish that up. You'll have 2 different looks, and then you can choose, do you wanna do 1-hour beanie or a 4-hour beanie? Okay, you guys, I finished the second one. I'm super happy with it, actually. And what I did was I started over. So I did my husband's beanie, and I was having all kinds of issues with it, and I couldn't deal with the fact that I had to put stitch markers in it. And, you know, once I got over all of that mentally, and I just started from the beginning, started recording and just did the stitch markers from the beginning, it only took 2.5 hours. So, and I will show you I took a little screenshot so you can see how long it took me. But so this one took 2.5 hours. We're gonna call it the 3-hour beanie just because, you know, everybody's abilities are different. So this is definitely the 1 hour beanie. We did this one in less than an hour. And I did finish, oh, and here's the back. Thank you. And then I did finish my husband's beanie, but my husband isn't here. So I wanted to introduce you to my son.
Hello.
And what do you think?
I like it. It's really good. It's really comfy.
Yeah, I think you might end up stealing it.
Maybe.
So my husband's not really big into wearing hats. He like wears baseball caps and that's about it. So I'm always making him stuff and then Chase ends up getting them. So anyway, it looks good on you. Matches your hair. Okay, cool. Well, anyway, so one little thing I wanted to tell you about too is that this took more than one skein of yarn and I used the Woolies Thick and Quick. But I noticed that on the other Thick and Quick, the solid color, you get more yarn. So you might be able to do it with one skein, where this one, for some reason, only had 87 yards of yarn on it. So it took a little more than one. And then this one was 197 yards. And this was the Woolies, Lion Brand, just plain Woolies. And it, I only used like half a skein per hat. Yeah. So you could probably get a third hat out of it. Anyway, so there we go. Thanks for watching.